We just had a pretty big trade. We just had DeVante Parker going over to be the wide receiver one for the New England Patriots. Honestly, probably the best receiver New England's had in a very long time. Of course, there have been a ton of other changes in the NFL. We have Watson on the Browns. We have a lot to be looking at in this draft, and I'm going to do something special in this draft. Y'all know in the last one, we were taking players that I wasn't the biggest fan of. I mean, I took Antonio Gibson at the 3-4 turn when there was Leonard Fournette on the board, and I said, well, Leonard Fournette has an ADP in the 5th round. I'll take him there in our next draft in the 4th, knowing that I'm going to draft over 200 teams so I can kind of play the ADP game to make sure that I don't end up with Leonard Fournette in 200 drafts and Antonio Gibson in 0. Well, this game, I'm going to ignore ADP. I'm going to go through and I'm going to exclusively just take the players that I want. And I think our team should probably look much better with that. But nonetheless, thank you for checking out the video. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment at any point you think that I make a horrendous pick, because I promise you there will be some. Last draft, I took, an embarrassing stance on Tyler Lockett, where we ended up getting him in the middle rounds. We won't make that mistake again. Let's go through. Let's set this up. I will post the link over there on Locals to get in this draft room. Should only take a couple seconds for this to fill. I mean, I'd imagine this is probably filled in about 10 seconds. So what I can do right now is we can go over, pull up the chat, give everybody a shout out that's come out so far. And I see that we already have a ridiculous amount of likes on the live stream. Thank you so much for everybody going down there and dropping a like on the stream. I genuinely appreciate it. And also, let me know if we are lagging right now. I am streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Rumble. I mean, we're streaming to a decent amount of places. So please let me know if we have a lag to the live stream so I can go through and potentially fix that. But yeah, we got Cameron, Andrew, Michael, Dominic, Tigers fan, Andrew, Dylan, Jacob, Caden, Lukey, Ashton, all out in the chat. Thank you all so much. And thank you, of course, for going down there and dropping those likes as well. And what I can do is I can actually send this link. If anybody in this chat is not a part of our Locals community, I'll send you all the link to the draft right now so y'all can go through and hop in there. It looks like we have about 3 spots left for anybody wanting to hop into this draft, and this is going to be a $5 draft. So yes, there's real money on the line. There are real stakes on the line. I prefer to go this way. That way we don't have people leaving the draft, halfway through. If you have someone mock drafting and all of a sudden 2 or 3 teams leave by the 6th round, all of a sudden that draft literally means absolutely nothing. It is completely garbage. We just sent that link out there in the live chat for anybody wanting to hop in. I'd imagine we get this filled in 5 seconds. There are only 2 spots left. Okay, Jayan says he's going to do the same as us. He's going to ignore ADP, just go best player available according to his own rankings. I think it'll be more exciting if we go about it this way. Okay, so Gerardo says we got no lag. Perfect. Okay, so Luke says, Mason, the title says mock draft. I apologize, not a mock draft. This is a real money fantasy football draft. I am sorry if anybody came here thinking it was a mock draft and is all upset that there's real money on the line. But if anything, I think it makes it a lot better. And here we are drafting. We have the 105. Excited to be going here. We are drafting right next to JN at the 103. We have a lot of people, as always, out here that are usuals to the chat. I believe we had Luke in the last draft. We had Deezenators in the last draft with us as well. Kickers Lives Matter was there. Jayan actually missed that one. We got some regulars. I think some people have been here only once or twice, but nonetheless, excited to draft with y'all. And let me send out a poll real quick to make sure that everybody has dropped a like on this live stream. Looks like we should be started in about 20 seconds. Piono coming out says, do you play in any redraft keeper leagues? If you don't know, I am the #1 dynasty fantasy football person on YouTube. Literally just you take keeper and you keep your entire team. That's my favorite format. Make videos about that every single day. Of course, not on this channel because I know not everybody plays dynasty fantasy football, but that's how I got started on YouTube is dynasty. That's my passion. That's what I love. Okay. So we have Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry going off the 101, the 102. I know we're going to get a lot of hate for it, but maybe we end up going with our guy here at the 105. I prefer Joe Mixon over Derrick Henry this year. I know it's crazy to say. People laughed at us when we preferred Joe Mixon over Ezekiel Elliott last season. I'm looking at Mixon, a 25-year-old running back, which we know, historically speaking, based on the research we've done this offseason presented in our Dynasty Research book, that's about the peak you should expect for these running backs. Their age 25 season and their age 28 season, which Derrick Henry is in. That's where we need to begin to get concerned about those RBs. And now we are on the clock. I am honestly not going to overthink this. Based on the fact that you have to start 3 wide receivers in this format, I'm going to take Cooper Kupp here. This is not just a selection that I'm making based on ADP. This is also a selection I'm making based on my own personal rankings. I think Cooper Kupp is by far and away the wide receiver one in fantasy. If you're looking at his points per game mark this past season, got above 26. I mean, showed us that he really demonstrated the same upside Devonte Adams had in 2020. Now, obviously, the difference between Cooper Kupp, Devonte Adams is Devonte Adams now does not have Aaron Rodgers. Cooper Kupp still in a fantastic situation in Los Angeles. And y'all know I was advocating to go with Devonte Adams at the 103 last year. That's how excited I was about Devonte Adams. His ADP was at the end of the first. I was taking him as early as pick 3. I mean, we were taking him ahead of guys like Dalvin Cook, ahead of someone like Alvin Kamara. I was all in on Devonte Adams. Okay, so we have Adams now going at the 108. Just speaking on that player, I can't get behind taking him ahead of Austin Eckler. Now, if you're looking at the overall downgrade he is going to have with his quarterback play this upcoming season, going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr, the efficiency on a per target basis should be down for Devonte Adams. And to combine that with the fact that he has both Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow to compete for targets with. Now, of course, Darren Waller is a much larger threat than Hunter Renfrow is. I can't get behind Devonte Adams here above guys like Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook. I honestly probably would prefer the running backs in that tier above them. But going back to what I was speaking on with Derrick Henry versus Joe Mixon, if you were looking at the additions that Cincinnati Bengals offensive line has this upcoming season compared to where they stood last year, Joe Mixon should be in a spot where he has just a significantly easier time being able to hit those holes and not getting hit as often behind the line of scrimmage during the obvious running down scenarios. Say 2nd and 1, 1st and 5, if they have a penalty. I think that Mixon's going to have a much easier time between the tackles this upcoming season. And both running backs do have red flags centering around their usage in the receiving game, but Joe Mixon will definitely have more targets out of the backfield than Derrick Henry. I believe that the Cincinnati Bengals will also have more trips to the red zone, equaling more high-value touches for a player like Joe Mixon. And like we said, Mixon coming off the healthy season, Derrick Henry coming off of an injury-riddled year, and most importantly, Derrick Henry's had over 1,000 touches over the past 4 seasons, where Mixon's workload is not exactly there. Okay. So we have Cassidy Lamb at the 206. CeeDee Lamb definitely, obviously, a riser whenever you have no Amari Cooper there. Up on the clock, I think that there are a couple different routes we could decide to take here because we go Cooper Kupp in the first. Whenever I see someone like A.J. Brown making it to us in the middle of the second, I don't necessarily think we have to go in the direction of a receiver. And honestly, I really like a couple of these running backs. I'm going to take someone that, if y'all remember, I was making fun of people for drafting Nick Chubb last year. I was literally mocking people going Nick Chubb in the first round before Joe Mixon, where we had Joe Mixon ranked ahead of him, but it was because Nick Chubb projected to be in a below average offense where he was going to be a committee running back. So I was saying, hell, Nick Chubb, one of the most talented running backs in the NFL, but he is probably the most talented committee running back in the NFL. You can't draft him in the first round. Well, if you look at the Kareem Hunt contract, there's an outside chance Kareem Hunt's not on this roster this upcoming season. Combine that, most importantly, not even really talking about Hunt here, but combine it with the quarterback upgrade that they are getting from Baker Mayfield to Deshaun Watson. Obviously, this team may skew to be a little bit more pass happy compared to where they've been over the previous 2 seasons. But if we're talking about running backs increasing their efficiency on a per touch basis, if we're talking about running backs having more opportunities in the red zone, Nick Chubb is in a much, much better spot this upcoming season than he was last year. So although I wasn't a fan of drafting Nick Chubb at the end of the first last year, and I know people probably think I'm a Nick Chubb hater, I'm all in on taking him here at the 208. I think that this is a running back that does have the upside to lead the NFL in rushing touchdowns, and we shouldn't be surprised if that happens. Now you have Breece Hall at the 212. This is significantly ahead of his ADP, and I am here for it. If you look at Breece Hall, we talk about this all the time on our Dynasty channel. I know we haven't talked about it as much here with the redraft community, but if we put him through our prospect model and assume that he was selected in the top 40 picks of the NFL draft, this is off the top of my head, so please excuse me if I have a player or two wrong here. The only players to grade out as highly as Breece Hall has done since 2014, Leonard Fournette, Todd Gurley, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, maybe Dalvin. Christian McCaffrey, I know, has very, very few running backs. And the only running backs that have graded out as highly as Breece Hall's prospects have been massive hits at the next level. Massive, massive hits. A.J. Brown finally goes off the board here at the 303 to JN. And that's really far behind his ADP. But now let's pull this up. And speaking of ignoring ADP and going with who I perceive to be the best player available, we didn't do this in the last draft because he is so far down there. Or is he already off the board? No, he's not. This is why I did not draft him in the last draft in the third round, because if you draft him just based on your own rankings, you would end up with 100% Leonard Fournette across all your drafts. So even though his ADP is in the 70s, I'm going to be taking him here at pick 29 once we have confirmation that he's going to Tampa with Tom Brady. There are more targets available in this offense with the departure of Antonio Brown. Leonard Fournette, I don't necessarily see the reason that he should be going behind, really any of these players that have gone in the third round already. So please, if you have not done so already, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Hop into some of these drafts with us. Go get yourself some Leonard Fournette. You don't even have to take him in the third. You can go take him in the fourth. But what I said is I was saying we are ignoring ADP. I'm going with my best player available to create, in my opinion, the best team possible, even though, of course, you want to be balanced if you're going to draft over 100 of these teams, as I plan on doing this offseason. But we're ignoring that. We're just going to go with Leonard Fournette in the middle of the third. And speaking of signing up for Underdog Fantasy, I feel like we haven't said this in this live stream yet. If you have not done so already, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. You can find the link in the description. You can find the link in the general chat as well. Nothing supports this channel more than when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy to go get into some real money drafts with myself, with people from the random lobby, with your friends, whoever you decide to draft with, and you use promo code FLOCK, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You will get a copy of our Dynasty Research Book, which hosts over 100 pages of quality information. We made a reference to it earlier, talking about running back age cliffs and how we really want to target those running backs that are before their age 28 season. And once they are 28, we probably shouldn't just be signing off to draft them at pick 2 overall. But there's a ton of useful information in that. And also, if you sign up for Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK, you get a month-long trial period of our premium content over there on Locals, including our rankings, whether that's our Dynasty rankings or our 2022 rankings. You can get exclusive invites to these drafts, extra live streams, so much stuff going on. Please take advantage of that. You can find the link in the description of the video, and I promise you, nothing supports this channel more. And I'll send that link out there in the live chat as well, just in case y'all can't find it. But let me know what y'all think of me going and just probably having the biggest reach of the draft so far and taking Leonard Fournette in the middle of the third. Personally, I don't think it's a reach. I think you should be going out there and you should be targeting him aggressively. Really, as soon as you have the running backs like DeAndre Swift and Nick Chubb off the board, I would say Leonard Fournette's probably the best player in that range. Since then, looks like we have a little bit of a wide receiver run happening. I would be more concerned about this if we decided to go Austin Eckler at the 105. There, we would be put into a very difficult position where we'd be scrambling for receivers, because keep in mind, this is a best ball league where you have to start 3 guys every single week. So because you don't submit your starting lineup and instead your automatic best starting lineup gets submitted for you at the end of every week, inherently, with how wide receivers have a wider range of outcomes with their scoring, they are going to be more valuable options here than a running back. And I think that we're probably just going to fire it up and we're going to go Terry McLaurin. Now, if this was a league that we had playoffs, so I'm sure if y'all go to Underdog Fantasy Lobby, you'll see that they have some massive tournament drafts where there's $100,000 to first. There's $1 million to first. In those leagues where you need the highest ceiling possible, I would have actually decided to go Chris Godwin there based on the upside that we would potentially have from Chris Godwin at the end of the season. If you're looking at Godwin's back-to-back seasons, he led the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in targets per game with Mike Evans and Tom Brady on that roster. And as we've already said, you are not going to have Antonio Brown this upcoming season. I think there are a ton of reasons to be excited about Chris Godwin. However, this is going to be a private league where there are no playoffs and we don't have that incentive to go out there and try to create the highest ceiling team possible. If anything, we just want to be top 3. That way we get paid. So you really need to understand that production in week 1 is the same as production in week 15, week 16, those playoff weeks. So if Chris Godwin potentially misses the first 3 weeks of this upcoming year, that is going to be massive in his evaluation for this league format in particular. Now, if you were playing in that tournament style draft, I actually would kind of consider Chris Godwin there. Of course, we'd be reaching on him because of the injury, but from a points per game perspective, he should dramatically outscore Michael Thomas, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, DJ Moore, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin. I think he's all the way up here with A.J. Brown, Deontay Johnson, Mike Evans tier. The issue with Chris Godwin in this format in particular is we just don't know how many games we are going to be getting. Okay, so let me go through and check this out. Jerry Jeudy at the 501. Nicholas says Eckler's the man. Easily should be the second or first pick in every draft. I can get behind Eckler. Definitely ahead of Najee. I mean, definitely ahead of Henry. Definitely ahead of Najee. He doesn't have the same access to the Christian McCaffrey ceiling. I know a lot of people are not going to like to hear that because obviously CMC is definitely the largest risk in the first round, but he also has the highest ceiling of any player in fantasy football. I would say Eckler is my 103. Okay, now we are on the clock. I think there are a couple different ways we could go with this selection. Jacobs would have been in consideration here for me if it wasn't for the addition of Devonte Adams. I'd imagine that actually lowers the touchdown equity that you were going to get from Josh Jacobs in that offense. So instead, we're going to go with J.K. Dobbins. I mean, J.K. Dobbins, very similar to Nick Chubb, going to be a committee running back that's going to be seeing I did not know we had this messed up for y'all where you could not see the entire draft board. I apologize. Let me fix that for everybody here. But yeah, with J.K. Dobbins, not going to see a full 3-down workload. This is going to be a committee running back, but what we really like with Dobbins is going to be playing in one of the most efficient running games in the entire NFL. With Dobbins, he led the NFL in yards per carry his first season, which of course, I mean, you cannot evaluate running backs based off their yards per carry when there are so many different variables affecting that one statistic, but it's at least a starting point to contextualize the offensive environment that he's playing in, especially when Gus Edwards was also top 10 in the NFL that same year with his own yards per carry. We know J.K. Dobbins is an elite level athlete playing behind a great offensive line and most importantly, playing alongside Lamar Jackson. While yes, Lamar is going to hurt J.K. Dobbins and he won't check the ball down often, still it will open up a wide running lanes when opposing linebackers have to freeze to make sure Lamar Jackson can't take the ball off the edge. So I like getting J.K. Dobbins here at the 505. He was best player according to my board, and also he was at the very top of ADP. Okay, Rodrigo says Elijah Mitchell is still available. How is that? Because Elijah Mitchell is a worse version of J.K. Dobbins. He's not catching passes in San Francisco. At the same time, Trey Lance is a much bigger quarterback where we have to worry about Trey Lance vulturing touchdowns at the goal line. J.K. Dobbins has a significant amount invested into him, being in a second-round pick in 2020. Also, with the Gus Edwards contract restructured last offseason, it's going to be very hard for the Baltimore Ravens to justify bringing in another running back through the NFL draft here, but you could actually see the 49ers talking themselves into bringing in another running back with the departure of Raheem Mostert to Miami, and also with the fact that, I mean, clearly they got absolutely nothing from Trey Sermon last year. So Michael Pittman, Tyler Lockett, Amara St. Brown. Yeah, so we took Tyler Lockett, I believe, at the 5'11 in last draft. And immediately I said, you know what? Worst pick of the draft because Mike Williams was on the board and Mike Williams pretty much was a better version of Tyler Lockett in every way imaginable. While yes, because it's the best ball format, you are going to be getting that spike in terms of the week-to-week production. But at the same time, Mike Williams provides that as well. And on top of that, if we're looking at Mike Williams compared to Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams is attached to Justin Herbert, and we have no idea who the quarterback for Tyler Lockett's going to be this upcoming season. Also, Lockett is pushing 30, which we have to be concerned with those speedy wide receivers. Godwin goes at the 604, like I already discussed. Fantastic value on Godwin. You could easily see him being a top 5 wide receiver this year on his points per game. But the issue is, as we discussed, this is a player that's probably going to miss the beginning part of the season, which in this format in particular, if you are going and getting in a tournament on Underdog Fantasy, you need to be targeting Chris Godwin in every single draft here. But in this league in particular, when there's no playoff stretch, it's going to be a little bit harder to do so. Okay, so yeah, I think that we almost have to just lock in a receiver with this selection. Darnell Mooney goes to the 607. Darnell Mooney would have been my top option. Now, if we're looking beyond this, I think if we are going back to talking about how when you're in that tournament style on Underdog Fantasy, you need to be chasing the highest upside possible. You need to be getting those players that can have the wide receiver 1 overall finish potentially in a given week in weeks 14, 15, 16. However, when we're looking for points throughout the entire season, in this private draft, I'm going to be going with Brandon Cooks over those rookies. Whereas, like I said, if we need a higher ceiling for the overall large field tournament, there I could easily see yourself talking yourself in to one of the rookies. Juju, also love the pick at the 610. Maybe I did myself a disservice by not scrolling down far enough for Juju Smith-Schuster. Okay, so David says, I think Godwin takes a step back this year. 100%. Godwin can take a step back and still be a fantastic value in this draft. Let me pull this up, but I was going through and tracking everything to prepare writing our 2022 fantasy football draft guide. We've already had a lot of people go out there and pre-order that 2022 fantasy football draft guide on flockfantasy.com. So of course, thank y'all so much for doing that. But let me pull up what we have seen with Godwin over the past 3 seasons. And I'll agree with you. I think Chris Godwin will take a step back. But this past year, Chris Godwin averaged over 9 targets a game. Chris Godwin had about 80 receiving yards per game as well. He finished as a top 10 receiving option, and his touchdown rate was under 4%. His touchdown rate, I promise you, will be higher this upcoming season. That's going to regress back to the mean. That's probably going to be a little bit closer to 6-7%. So he could take a small hit with his targets. He could take a small hit with his receiving yards per game. But assuming he has higher overall touchdown equity in this offense, I actually think that here with Chris Godwin, I mean, if you look at the overall context, he has Tom Brady. He has no Antonio Brown. He's 26 years old, 25 years old. I mean, I'm all in on Chris Godwin if he's being drafted here. He can still take a step back. Maybe he's not going to be the wide receiver 8 this upcoming season. Maybe he's the wide receiver 12, the wide receiver 13, the wide receiver 14. It's still a hell of a lot higher than where he's being drafted. Okay, Dalton Schultz at the 704. Okay, so now let's go through. Let's check this out. We do not have any potential stacks with these players. I know we were speaking about, you know what? Yeah, that's what we're going to do. I know we were speaking about rookies maybe being a little bit less valuable in this format, but considering how the wide receiver position is really drying up, I mean, if you look at the board here, you have that run of receivers happening where, I mean, there are 3 players that weren't receivers going off within a span of about 14 picks. I'm very concerned about what the receiver position is going to look like when we get back to around pick 92. I know some people that maybe aren't used to Underdog Fantasy may not understand just the run on wide receivers that are going to happen in the middle of these rounds, but it's because you don't submit your starting lineup throughout the season and the volatility of the wide receiver position combined with the fact that you have to start 3 of these guys. These wide receivers are going to continue to soak up. I think that there are a couple running backs that I feel comfortable with on the board. So we're going to go Garrett Wilson. Definitely could be a mistake in this draft in particular when we're talking about these rookies not being as valuable. Possibly we want to instead go with someone like Allen Robinson here at the 707, which is completely understandable. Allen Robinson is probably the pick that we need to make in the next draft. But as I've said, I mean, this is why we're getting these practices. And this is a $5 draft. And we need to make sure that we are crisp by the time we get to the beginning of the season. We're in those $250 drafts. Okay, so You got Cortland Sutton at the 7-11, Kenneth Walker at the 7-12. Honestly, I thought we were potentially going to go with Kenneth Walker here when we went Garrett Wilson. Like I said, the reason we decided to go Garrett Wilson is simply because I was worried about the wide receiver run that was going to happen here and worried about the receivers that would make it back to us when we need to build the depth of the position with this format. Elijah says, do you think I reached on Bateman? I was torn between him and another. Personally, I probably wouldn't have gone Bateman here. Let me see. If you only had one running back, I honestly probably would have preferred to go over and instead look at someone like Kenneth Walker. I would also have preferred Drake London over Rashad Bateman, but it is what it is. A.J. Dillon at the 803, Dak Prescott at the 804. So Dak falling a considerable amount. I almost said that Lucci here had the stack with Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper, but clearly that's not the case. Okay, so I think Robert Woods at the 806. We don't need to go running back here. Claypool goes to the 807. So thank God we took a receiver with that last pick, because now we'd be looking at Christian Kirk as our highest ranked player. Devin Singletary, he is so gross. So gross. I will be the first person to admit that. And I'm not necessarily taking him because his ADP is pick 75. We're getting him at pick 92. Like I said, we're not drafting based off of ADP in this draft in particular. I'm not even concerned with getting 100% shares of Leonard Fournette. I'm not going to be concerned about diversifying whatsoever. But at the end of the day, if we're getting Devin Singletary as our running back 4, and this is a running back that's going to be playing in Buffalo, where we can assume that Josh Allen will probably lead this team to being a top 5 overall offense in the NFL, I think we'd be pretty confident with this Devin Singletary selection. Like if we're viewing him, I mean, as Ronald Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously both now committee backfields. I mean, in that committee backfield in Kansas City, like Devin Singletary has less competition for targets than those running backs. And I think we can say probably with the departure of Tyreek Hill that you would prefer having that exposure to the Buffalo Bills offense compared to the Kansas City Chiefs offense. So yeah, I'm going to feel comfortable here with Devin Singletary. Okay, so Brandon says, can I see the top of the draft? Yes, sir. Let me go through, show this for you. There you go. And please, like I said, if y'all are just now coming into the draft, make sure you go down there, drop a like on the live stream. We are about to pass 100 likes on the stream. And also, if you have not signed up for Underdog Fantasy, please, for the love of God, support the channel. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK. Get access to our premium content on locals, including our rankings when you use promo code FLOCK and make at least the $10 deposit. Also, get our Dynasty Research book, over 100 pages of quality information to help you crush your Dynasty leagues as well as your 2022 leagues. And get your deposit matched dollar for dollar up to $100. So if you go deposit $10, they will pay you $10, and then you'll also get a $50 value on top of that. Please take advantage of that deal. Nothing helps the channel more. Okay, so honestly, I'm very happy with our decision to go Devin Singletary with that last pick, because we still have the tier of elite level quarterbacks making it back to us. Now, I am going to go with Matthew Stafford here. Y'all know how much I love me some Trey Lance. Y'all know I was screaming all last year, Trey Lance is a better player in Dynasty than Justin Fields. And literally, I don't know how much we talked about it. People probably hated us for it. But when we have Cooper Kupp in the first round and Stafford does fall here, there's no way in hell that those quarterbacks with access to elite level ceilings are going to make it back to us in the 10th. We're going to have to choose our guy out of that tier. And in a draft where we decided to go Cooper Kupp, that's where I'm going to be wanting to go and get Matthew Stafford. But when we take Stafford here at the 905, one thing that we have to admit, and this is clear as day, so it's not that large of a confession of anything, but our selection in the 7th round here of Garrett Wilson is horrible. It's a train wreck. We needed to go Allen Robinson, even if I am probably going to be avoiding Allen Robinson in a lot of drafts this season. Here in the middle of the 7th round, great value on A-Rob considering the landing spot that he has. And if we were able to get the double stack with Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Allen Robinson, that would be fantastic. But we'll see if it ends up happening. Derek says, no one took Patterson yet, question mark. Well, yeah, Patterson goes the direct pick right after us. the 906. With Patterson, the thing is there are just no other players there to get touches away from him. Now, Odell Beckham Jr. goes to the 909. The issue with Odell, very similar to what we were talking about earlier with Chris Godwin, but to a greater extent, is in a league like this where you don't have the fantasy football playoffs and you're really worried about the points getting scored in weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. Odell tearing his ACL in mid-February. If we just go through and look at best case scenario, keep in mind, this isn't his first ACL tear. That's always a concern. Keep in mind his age. That's also a concern for the timetable. And the best case scenario with these players with that injury is 9 months. That's best case scenario. And here with Odell Beckham Jr., if that happens, 9 months, that would put him at a return late November. So you're essentially missing half the season. So for that reason, I'm going to prefer passing on Odell Beckham Jr. here, potentially going Rondale Moore, DeVante Parker. We have DeVante Parker finally going off the board at the 10:01. We can assume DeVante Parker now the wide receiver 1 in New England. I honestly probably prefer DeVante Parker over Rondale Moore, over Odell Beckham Jr., over DJ Chark. DeVante Parker, specifically for a best ball format as well, is a wide receiver that's going to be able to rack up a ton of air yards. It's a wide receiver that operates a little bit further downfield. And I think it's a natural fit in this New England Patriots offense where they obviously need that alpha wide receiver 1. Okay, but we are about to be back up on the clock here at the 10:08. We still need to bring in receivers. We only have 4 on this team. If we're looking at receivers that are going a little bit later in this draft, Alexander Madison goes to the 10:06. This is why we decided to go in the direction of someone like Brandon Cooks, Garrett Wilson in the middle of rounds, because once you get to the double-digit rounds here, these wide receivers are just disgusting. Hopefully Luke goes Trey Lance. He goes from Ramondre Stevenson. Oh my gosh. Y'all know I want to do it. Y'all know I want to do it so badly. I want to, but I can't, knowing the receivers that we're going to be able to have. The quarterbacks that we're going to be able to have later on, in the receiver positions just going to dry up. We're going to take Michael Gallup here. With Michael Gallup, he actually led the Dallas Cowboys in targets per game as well as receiving yards per game back in 2019. That was the season where Amari Cooper was fully healthy. And in that 2019 year, it was only Michael Gallup's second season in the NFL. This is a player that has flashed an immense amount of talent before. Now he's going to be an every down option this upcoming season and one of the best offenses in the NFL. That offense led the NFL with points scored last year. He's going to be their second target, hopefully ahead of Dalton Schultz, but we're getting him here at the 10:08 as our 5th receiver. I think we honestly probably needed to make the pick, even though deep down, y'all know I wanted my Trey Lance. And Deezonator said we went through and sniped him on Gallup. Yeah, I think Gallup was the best value wide receiver on the board. Sounds like JN's having an issue with the draft. My man, sounds like nobody else is. Probably need to update your app or something. I don't think anybody else here is having an issue. Okay, so we have Marlon Mack here at the 10:12. What the hell is Marlon Mack doing at the 10:12? Is this a meme pick? This is why we have real money drafts. Because if someone wants to come in here and make some crazy picks, they're just donating to the league pot. Let me look up Marlon Mack on Twitter. See if there's anything that I missed. Louis Gashnault at the 11:02. The Texans signing. Ooh, that's interesting. How did I not see this yesterday? Still definitely not taking Marlon Mack here. I want to see the contract for Marlon Mack. I would assume that he got paid close to nothing. This is a running back that if you look at his efficiency last year coming back from the torn Achilles, it was just horrendous. George Pickens, great pick at the 11:04. Don't really like George Pickens in Dynasty with his price point, but here, that's a fantastic selection. And you know I have to get my guy. Don't make fun of me. We waited long enough, okay? His ADP is pick 76. It's pick 125. I'm not drafting according to ADP this draft, drafting according to best player available in a best ball format. If we take Matthew Stafford and Trey Lance here, I am assuming we are getting a quarterback one finish every single week throughout the season with how the spike weeks will play out. Love getting me some Trey Lance. This is beautiful. Beautiful. Of course, if Jimmy Garoppolo is not traded, I will probably be crying myself to sleep every single night this upcoming year. But that's regardless of if I take Trey Lance at the 11:05 or not. I've already said if Jimmy Garoppolo starts ahead of Trey Lance this upcoming season, I'm probably going to have to go ahead and delete my YouTube channel. So it can't hurt to double down. Okay, yeah, so a lot of people says, wow, Texans got Marlon Mack. That's news to me. Unless it doesn't look like it was an April Fool's thing or anything because Spotrac has Marlon Mack there signed to the Houston Texans for next season. It's a $2 million deal. Like it's literally nothing. And that's not even the guaranteed money as well. So it looks like Marlon Mack was brought in very similar to how Philip Lindsay was brought in last year. I know people in fantasy really like the name Marlon Mack, but in reality, Marlon Mack has close to no value. Kenny Gallaudet at the 11:09. Love the Kenny Gallaudet selection. Here, overall, Lucci is killing this draft. The only pick that I really don't like would probably be that Odell Beckham Jr. selection. And if this was a tournament where we are looking for that highest ceiling possible in the playoff scenario, then I would be fine with Odell. The issue is that this is that private draft. You have Tom Brady going at the 12:01. Obviously, Tom Brady pushed way down there. According to ADP, probably should have gone Tom Brady instead of Trey Lance. It is what it is, though. It is what it is. Hunter says you guys all don't know how to draft. My man, Hunter, thank you. We finally had a genius that knows how to draft coming into the live chat. Thank God you are here to take our money, to take advantage of us. My friend, if you are this smart, if you were smarter than all 12 drafters, I encourage you to go sign up for an Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK. Hell, deposit all $100. Get $100 immediately added to your account as well. I have $200 sitting there. And come take all our money in these drafts because we are going to be doing these drafts pretty much, I don't want to say every day, but multiple drafts every single week leading up to NFL kickoff. And once we get to the 30-day stretch leading up to kickoff, we'll be doing these drafts every single day like we did last year. Okay, so now let's go with our next one. Van Jefferson goes at the 12:07. Okay, so Joshua Palmer obviously pushed up in ADP because people thought that you were actually going to get Mike Williams potentially leaving. Curtis Samuel, the issue is Washington could potentially take a receiver in the NFL draft. We have 5 receivers. We don't have a tight end yet. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to ignore ADP. I'm going to get Cole Kmet. We're going to take Cole Kmet over Noah Fant. We're going to take him over Hunter Henry. With Kmet, the thing is, if you're looking at his targets per game last year, Cole Kmet was a foundational piece. This is off the top of my head, so please forgive me if I'm off by 0.1%. But I believe he had 17.8% of his team's target share last season. That is massive for a tight end. Not to mention that Cole Kmet was 22 years old last year. Cole Kmet is younger than Pat Frymuth. And he came in and accounted for 17% of the targets in Chicago. Allen Robinson is now gone. There are so many targets available in that offense. With Cole Kmet on top of that, I know his fantasy production wasn't there, but it's because he scored 0 touchdowns. He had a ridiculous amount of volume, but the touchdowns were just non-existent. What do we always talk about? We talk about betting on those players that should get that bump up with their touchdown rate closer to league average because it's the most volatile statistic in fantasy football that are consistently getting the volume. Now Cole Kmet going into year 3. I'm all in. I'll love getting some Cole Kmet here at the 12:08. Okay, so let's go through, and we got Kyron Williams at the 13:01. Logan Thomas at the 12:02. Honestly, we're probably going to get my guy coming back to us that I want as well. Tim says, Mason, so Waddle or Metcalf if Seattle trades for a quarterback? Depends who they're trading for. I probably do prefer Metcalf over Waddle at this point with the addition of Tyreek Hill, especially if they get someone like Jimmy Garoppolo. The issue is unsure if they're going to be willing to trade Jimmy Garoppolo in division. Okay, but now we are on the clock. Really can't look at quarterback here. And instead, we are probably going to go with a receiver that I hated at the beginning of the offseason. But let me actually scroll down a bit and see the other players that are available. Ooh, interesting. No, we're not. We're going to go with my favorite tight end in drafts this year. We're going to go with Irv Smith Jr. Speaking of tight ends that are a lot younger than you think, Irv Smith Jr. is about 3 months older than Pat Freiermuth. Irv Smith Jr. is a player that, yes, has never shown that elite level step, but last time we saw Irv Smith Jr. on the field, that was 2020. What did the Minnesota Vikings look like in 2020? They had Kyle Rudolph. And not only did they have Kyle Rudolph, they had Tyler Conklin. And those two tight ends played a considerable amount of snaps, drew a considerable amount of targets, which you would assume that they did because Irv Smith Jr. was only 21 years old that season. He turned 22 later on in the year, but that doesn't really matter too much. And if you look at the overall volume that those three tight ends, that tight end committee had, that would have made them a top 3 tight end that season, only behind the elite level players like Travis Kelce. Now, you have no Kyle Rudolph. You have no Tyler Conklin. You have Irv Smith Jr. going into, I believe, his age 24 season. And what's really exciting is very similar to another player we took earlier in this draft, J.K. Dobbins, is while, yes, they suffered season-ending injuries, that happened before the season even started. So with that happening before the season even starting, we don't really need to worry about there being a lag for them to get ready. We don't have to worry about them possibly missing week 1, missing week 2, because they're just going to be good to go right away. Jet says, how high are you on Michael Carter? Assuming that your name is Jets, I'd imagine that you are pretty damn high on Michael Carter, probably a lot higher than I am. I will be more excited about Michael Carter if he does escape the NFL draft. He's already dodged a ton of bullets in free agency. Now, I understand Michael Carter definitely flashed where I think he does have the potential where you don't have to see the Jets draft a running back, but based on the limited team investment that they have into him, it's definitely in the range of outcomes and is still something that I'd be slightly concerned about. Okay, so let's go through check. I'm really looking at one position in particular. Oh, crap. Okay, well, there was a player that I preferred over Joshua Palmer, but it's my fault for not pulling up the draft list and instead reading the chat too close to our pick. Joshua Palmer's fine here at the 1408. I mean, we saw some flashes last year. Of course, what you're hoping for if you take Joshua Palmer as an injury to either 30-year-old Keenan Allen or an injury to Mike Williams, as we saw, which allowed Joshua Palmer to step up and for him to actually come away with a wide receiver to finish, I believe, over a 2-week stretch. I know that was mainly because he had that one touchdown, but there were about 1 to 2 other wide receivers that I preferred over Palmer, but it is what it is. That's my fault for not pulling up the list, and it's not that big of a deal. We really just needed a receiver there. Tim says, Mason, why is Mac Jones rated below Jalen Hurts when Mac Jones is more likely to be a starter in 2023? Because if you're looking at what I'm trying to accomplish with rankings, is I'm not trying to come out here and say, you know what? Mac Jones is a better quarterback, or Mac Jones will have the longer NFL career. We really need to balance that with the actual points per game from those players. And the issue is Jalen Hurts has a ceiling to be able to have a top 3, at least a top 5 overall quarterback finish in any season that he plays on a per game basis, based on the fact that he can get up to 60 rushing yards a game. And at the same time, he can cannibalize those rushing touchdowns near the goal line. Whereas Mac Jones, we don't even know if he has top 10 upside. And that's nothing against Mac Jones. Mac Jones could be a great NFL quarterback. The issue is with today's age of quarterback in fantasy football in particular, you have to be able to run the ball in a 4-point passing touchdown format. I personally play in 4-point passing touchdown formats, so that's what we create our rankings for, and that's what's listed over there on Locals as well. Ken Tran says, do you think the Browns will sign Will Fuller? I'd imagine they sign Will Fuller. What I've read that you actually have that thumb injury as a pretty significant holdup for the Cleveland Browns, and they're really just trying to make sure that everything's fine with that before they go out there and make it official with Fuller. Okay, so Zach Wilson at the 1505. I'm completely fine continuing to avoid the quarterback position. Scroll through, and I believe the receiver that, yeah. We have 4 running backs, 6 receivers. You know what? We're going to take a running back. We'll take Rashad White here. With Rashad White, he definitely has access to a very high ceiling, specifically as a receiving running back. This is someone that was getting up to 16, I believe 17% of his team's college target share, which indicates an elite receiving ceiling. Similar to what we had with guys like David Johnson, Christian McCaffrey. Now, you cannot compare him. You cannot say he is going to be those players. You can't even dream of him ever turning into David Johnson. And the reason for that is if you look at Rashad White, his BMI, I believe, is 29.0, which will not allow him to handle 25 plus touches a game, as we have seen before with David Johnson, with Christian McCaffrey. But that is not to say that Rashad White couldn't step into a running back by committee backfield. Like, say he goes and stays in that state. He goes from Arizona State to the Arizona Cardinals. You could easily see him being the third down running back there with James Conner and finding a ton of success with a role like that. And maybe he goes to New England, is the third down running back for the New England Patriots. There are a lot of different scenarios where Rashad White could pay off with this selection. So we are going to go with him at the 1505. You have Sky Moore going at the 1510. Sky Moore, a receiver that we were kind of making fun of at the beginning of the offseason because Dwayne Eskridge just went through and lapped him in production back in 2020. But if you're looking at my prospect model, dear God, Sky Moore does look pretty damn good. Okay, so Kenyon Drake at the 1601, KJ Osborne at the 1602. Okay, so Thomas says, can tight end be used as a flex in this draft? Yes, tight end can be used as a flex. Nico Collins at the 1603. Love the Nico Collins selection. Here, I was wondering if we should go Collins when we had Brandon Cooks on the roster. Probably not too big of a deal. Probably not something we should be overthinking. Derek says, how is Patterson not higher on draft boards when he does everything, especially in full PPR? A couple things. Patterson's A, 30 years old, and B, you're looking at a career for Cordell Patterson that I believe is going on 8 NFL seasons now, and you have an 8-year sample with 1 season of adequate production. I understand you have the argument, well, Mason, Cordell Patterson's never been in a role as good as what he has in Atlanta, which is 100% a valid argument, which is why Cordell Patterson is going higher in drafts now than he's gone at least over the past 5 to 6 seasons. Now, another issue is this is not full PPR. This is going to be half PPR. Another issue on top of that is he's playing potentially one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So with Cordell Patterson, I don't want to say he's being overdrafted where he is, but I also don't want to act like he is one of the biggest values in these drafts. Okay. So now let's go through, look for some other options. CJ Uzomah at the 1607. I think we're potentially just going to go with the homer pick here. Someone that y'all know I am a pretty big fan of, and he gets probably one of the biggest upgrades this season at the quarterback position. We are going to get KJ Hamler here. KJ Hamler is not going to be someone that's valuable in a regular fantasy football league for y'all. However, in a best ball league in particular, this is where KJ Hamler can have value, because here with KJ Hamler, this is someone that you are looking at saying, hell, when he does score, you know it's going to be 70-yard touchdown reception with how he is used in this offense combined with the elite speed. Now, it sucks that they re-signed Tim Patrick. Of course, that is something that I need to bring up, and that's why I'm saying in a regular format, KJ Hamler is not going to have any value for you. However, in this league format in particular, he actually can. Cal says, bro, you were down bad doing drafts in the beginning of April. Honestly, my man, loving life here. Like I said, since these are best ball drafts, I'm going to get into 200 plus of these. There are no waivers during this season, and at the same time, you don't have to submit your starting lineup. So I'll probably be a crazy person, and I'll probably be checking, saying like, oh, okay, that draft we did on April 2nd. How is that team looking? Are we in first? Are we in last? Are we in sixth? What's going on? I'll probably be checking it in week 6, in week 7. But in reality, it's not going to take me any time during the year to go through and manage it, which is why I love Underdog Fantasy, and which is why we have partnered with Underdog Fantasy and probably the best offering that you are going to be able to find. So please make sure you go sign up, use promo code FLOCK as well. Okay, so let's pull this up. What we are going to need in this draft is we are probably going to need one more running back minimum. It would have been really nice to have Kenyon Drake making it back to us. Okay, James Cook goes off the board. We're going to take Brian Robinson here. Brian Robinson, I hate having this many rookies in this format, though. He's our third rookie, and we're taking him here in the 17th round. You know what? It is what it is. We're going to take Brian Robinson. Now, the issue with Brian Robinson is he has a couple red flags on his profile. First thing is, man's like 23 years old. Now, there's an explanation on why Brian Robinson is so damn old, and that is centered around what he has dealt with at Alabama. This was an Alabama roster that when Brian Robinson went there as a true freshman, they had Josh Jacobs, Damian Harris, Najee Harris, all on the team, which, of course, that is more than enough for your excuse on why you're not able to get on the field and why you're not able to produce right away. They also have Jerome Ford on the team. They have 5 NFL quality running backs on that roster. Jerome Ford ends up having to transfer over to Cincinnati. He's going to be drafted in a very similar range to Brian Robinson in the NFL draft, probably about 1 to 2 rounds after. But it's damn near impossible if that's your situation to be able to get on the field right away. Wasn't necessarily special in any way, but he has adequate size. He's a running back that's not super unathletic. He's not that exciting. It's hard for me to talk him up like I can with Rashad White with the elite receiving level capability, but he's a running back. We need running back bodies. He'll probably go at the end of the 3rd round, the beginning of the 4th round of this year's NFL draft. Thomas says, what is the issue with a lot of rookies, specifically with this format in particular? Because we're not in those tournament drafts on Underdog where there's the $100,000 to first place, where you just need the highest ceiling possible during that fantasy football playoff stretch in weeks 15, 16, 17, where you'd imagine that's where those rookies are really showing their upside. Instead, this is a private draft where all the money for this league pot is based on just these 11 other owners. So we are trying to get 1st, 2nd, or 3rd just against these 11 other owners. That way we can get money and we can cash out here. But how it's going to be different is you are not going to have that playoff stretch. Instead, you are going to be looking at a setup where it's just total points throughout the entire season. So the luck at the end of the season, the luck with the playoffs isn't really a factor, which is why if you were in a private draft like this, you should be pushing rookies down slightly. Of course, you shouldn't be making drastic moves, but you should be pushing rookies slightly down your board because we can assume they may not produce right away in weeks 1, 2, and 3. And we should also be going there and potentially pushing down some of the guys that we'd be finding coming back from injuries like Odell Beckham Jr., Chris Godwin, and Robert Woods. Okay, so let's pull this up. Terrace Marshall goes. Really like the pick of Terrace Marshall. Okay, so we have, I believe, 3 rounds left. We have 3 rounds. We definitely need at least 2 more receivers. We're going to get 2 more receivers here. I can potentially talk myself in to a quarterback or a tight end or even a running back, dependent on the value. But let's pull up the receiver position and see what is best available. If you did not have Russell Wilson traded out of Seattle, I would really like Dwayne Eskridge here. There's one receiver I'm soaking up in a lot of these drafts in the last round that I'm probably going to draft, but we don't have to take him here. We're going to take Wandel Robinson right after talking about the fact that we don't want too many rookies. We're going to add our 4th rookie to this roster, but if you look at where we're taking these rookies, we've taken them at pick 173, pick 197, 77, and 212. So yes, we have a decent amount of rookies on this team, but the investment has been slim to none with these players. Still want to maintain that stance that we are breaking ties in favor of the veterans that should produce right away. Now, the issue is these are the best players on the board. Wandel Robinson is easily the best player on the board, could potentially go in the 2nd round of the NFL draft. He was dominant his final season in college. He declared early at the same time. He's a great athlete. He's a little small, which definitely that is a red flag, but it's fine. Okay, so Tony says, fuzzy sound noise. Okay, please let me know if anybody has an issue with the audio. Please let me know if anybody has an issue with the audio. And Derek says, thank you for answering my question on Patterson. Of course, my man. And I don't mean to sound like an ass or anything. I was just trying to go through and give the explanation on why someone would be lower on Cordell Patterson compared to where he finished last year. Because I understand it. I mean, like we said, when he was drafted, there are definitely, a ton of reasons to be excited about Cordell Patterson. Okay, so Robert Tonyan goes at the 8-11. Jamal Williams at the 8-12. Really like the Jamal Williams pick. Okay, so people saying there's a tiny hum. I'll work on trying to fix that after the live stream. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so let's pull this back up. And you know what? We can probably cut the live stream here after I make this next selection, because when we have AJ Green, Jamal Williams, Robert Tonyan going off the board, I'd imagine not too many people are interested in seeing beyond this. You know what we're going to do? This is probably the easiest pick ever. I hate that we're making this pick on a team where we drafted Leonard Fournette, because y'all know I'm not a massive fan of going out there and handcuffing running backs. But Keyshawn Vaughn now is the running back 2, unquestioned, in Tampa, correct? I guess Trey Sermon's the running back 2 in San Francisco. Sony Michel could find his way to being a running back 2 spot as well. So I guess maybe we shouldn't just be going all in there. Instead, I really would like to add another receiver. The issue is all these receivers are gone. I'm going to fill you all in with a player that I've been drafting. I know, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do that. Keyshawn Vaughn goes. F it. We'll take Sermon. Let me show y'all the entire draft board. Of course, thank y'all so much for being a part of the flock, for supporting the channel. Really hope y'all enjoyed this live stream. Really hope I was able to help out in some way imaginable. Please go down to the comment section. Let me know how bad I messed this draft up. I think the worst selection that I made that we need to work on for next time is considering this format and considering we went Cooper Kupp in the first. When we go Cooper Kupp in the first, we should know we're targeting Matthew Stafford later on. This pick of Garrett Wilson at the 705 is atrocious, knowing that Allen Robinson goes directly after. If we go Allen Robinson here, we still get Matthew Stafford at a relatively good price. With the selection of Matthew Stafford, we could have the double stack with Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp. Love that idea. Outside of that, honestly, I think we did a relatively good job in this draft. I felt like we probably did not come away with enough wide receivers, but if I was to go back and look at where else we could have gone with a receiver, potentially pass on Singletary, go Christian Kirk. But outside of that, I felt like we maybe just got boxed out of the position a little bit. And I don't really feel bad about passing up on anybody else. It would have been real nice to get Justin Ross falling to us. But of course, thank y'all again for being a part of the flock. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. We're going to be doing 1,000,000 of these drafts. And when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy, use promo code FLOCK. You get access to premium content on locals. Be a part of the flock for a month for free. On top of that, you get our Dynasty research book, over 100 plus pages of quality information to help you with your Dynasty leagues and your 2022 drafts. And they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. I promise you, I'm doing over 100, easily over 100 drafts on the live stream this year. So you will have more than enough opportunities to hop in here on the stream with me if you would like to. Please go down there, just sign up, use promo code FLOCK so you can support the channel. Thank y'all again. I hope you have a great day. I'll try to fix this audio for y'all for next time. And yeah, see you guys.